years ago, around the holiday season, I used to give one of my favorite talks of all time, which is why it's okay to lie to children. I wrote it for atheists and skeptics who often worry that lying to kids about Santa Claus is going to be damaging to them. These people tend to think that truth and honesty are of the utmost importance when teaching your kids about the world, because these parents want their kids to A, trust them no matter what, and B, emulate them by learning to value truth and honesty as well. For atheists in particular, there's also the added facet of not mimicking something that they themselves have gone through and felt some amount of bitterness for in the past, in which you realize that there is no God and everyone around you has been lying to you and or themselves your entire life. That argument comes up surprisingly often in atheist circles, which atheists, if you feel an intense bitterness about learning that there is no God or you feel a matching bitterness regarding learning that there is no Santa, I beg you to seek therapy. I'm not just being flippant here. You don't need to go through your life with that kind of anger. Work through it. You and everyone around you will be the better for it. But really, I have always sympathized with parents' desire to demonstrate positive values to their kids and to do that by skipping the whole Santa thing. I get it. While I don't think that it's a big deal if a parent skips Santa, I don't actually think it's necessary, and I said as much in my talk. I pointed out that child psychologists have found that kids use things like Santa as a stepping stone in teaching themselves all of the characteristics that skeptics and atheists tend to value the most. Critical thinking, not blindly trusting things that people tell you, especially if those people are authority figures. You shouldn't just believe what they say. I took that lesson from Santa. I believed in Santa as a kid, and then I got suspicious, so I started quizzing my parents. I compared handwriting samples. I left an actual series of questions for Santa next to the plate of cookies, and then the next morning I went over the answers that Santa left for me to try to figure out if they made sense, and I compared the handwriting to my mom and my dad's. That's skepticism. That's curiosity and investigation. In my talk, I pointed out a study in which researchers made up a Santa-like figure they called the Candy Witch. They told a bunch of little kids that on Halloween, children who put candy under their pillows will find that the Candy Witch will come in the night and swap it out for money while they sleep. And then the researchers had some of the parents of the children actually leave money under their kids' pillows. And kids who were very young, like 4, would either believe in the Candy Witch or not, in equal numbers, regardless of whether or not their parents played along. But older kids, around 6, were much more likely to believe in the Candy Witch if their parents played along. In other words, the researchers identified that this was a time, this 4 to 6 period of time, when kids start learning critical thinking, looking for evidence, and understanding that evidence can either support or refute the extraordinary claims that they're told. Kids who believe in Santa do so not because they're stupid, but because of critical thinking. They wouldn't believe if they didn't see Santa at the mall, if they didn't get presents from Santa, if they didn't see that Santa ate the cookies that they left out for him. It's only later, once they're older, that they're even capable of finding new evidence. And one big piece of that evidence is the realization that maybe adults are lying to you. I think that that's actually a great lesson for kids to eventually learn. I mean, sure, you don't want to go too far and leave a kid with no one to trust ever as they grow up, but it's also not good to completely shelter a kid from the world to the point that they reach adulthood without ever learning that people will lie and try to trick you, that you can't just trust people for no reason. And for that reason, and because I think it's a little funny, I lie to kids all the time. I told a friend's kid that I was a vampire, for instance, once, because I had 2 bug bites that looked kind of like a vampire bite. And I loved seeing him roll that information around in his head, figuring out whether or not I was screwing with him. And he started asking questions about why he had previously seen me out in the sunlight and whether I was allergic to garlic. And he started coming up with ways to test whether or not I was a vampire. He eventually decided that I was in fact lying, and we had a good laugh about it. I've held this pro-lying opinion for some time, but as a skeptic, I know that if I see evidence that, for instance, lying to kids about Santa or what have you is an absolutely bad thing, then I will change my mind. That's why I was very interested recently to see a paper claiming that children told lies by parents subsequently lie more as adults and face adjustment difficulties. That's a direct quote from a press release from the university that sponsored the research. Psychologists at Singapore's Nanyang Technological University surveyed 379 young adults. Let's be honest, it's a psychology study at a university, so you'd be safe guessing that these were all undergrads, and asked them to recall how often their parents lied to them as kids and how often they themselves lie to their parents today. And then those students all took a test that gauged their selfishness, impulsivity, and general maladaptiveness. Sure enough, they say they found that people who reported that their parents lied to them as children were more likely to say they lied to their parents in return today, and those people were more likely to be aggressive, break rules, and display intrusive behaviors in otherwise polite society. So there we go, open and shut, right? Parents lying to kids, bad. Well, maybe. The university press release, like far too many university press releases, makes some understandable mistakes that might give you the wrong idea here. The researchers point out that this study does not actually show that parents lying to kids leads to those kids growing up to be maladjusted liars. All of this was self-reported by the now grown-up kids in question. This study actually shows that people who lie to their parents are more likely to display other maladaptive traits, and those people are more likely to recall their parents lying to them. We don't actually know how often these societal black sheep's parents actually did lie to them. And even if all of the participants were able to accurately recall how often their parents lied to them, we also don't know if parents who lie a lot to their kids are more likely to have other poor parental skills that may lead to their kids growing up a little screwy. Finally, the study does not differentiate between lies. Parents may lie to, for instance, get a kid to stop whining in the store by saying, if you're good, we'll come back later and buy that toy. Or a parent might say to a kid who hits his little sibling, if you aren't good, Santa's not going to bring you any toys. Or a parent might tell a kid who is crying, if you keep crying, I'm going to drive you to the orphanage, drop you off, and you're never going to see your family again. Not every lie is equal or equally likely to screw someone up in the long run. Do these blank spots in the study mean that the study itself is worthless? Absolutely not. I've talked about this before, but I will say it again. No single study will answer all the questions about a subject. Hell, it won't even answer the specific question it's asking. It just gives one possible answer that follow-up studies will hopefully make clearer. This study may suggest that parents do want to be careful to not lie constantly to their kids when telling them the truth might just be a little harder, but better for them in the long run. When it comes to something like Santa, though, it's not enough to make anyone worry. 85% of all American kids grow up believing in Santa. And while America is super fucked up in a lot of ways, most people here are still basically good, moral people. I know you don't want to believe that, and there are days when I don't believe it either, but it's true. Most people are okay. Not me, of course. My parents really screwed me up with that Santa stuff, and that's what I plan to tell the cops if they ever catch me. Merry Christmas.